Hello everyone, this is LizzReptile, and I know that I am a little bit late to the party, and I didn't even bring tequila shots for everyone, and believe me, we are going to need them. But I want to talk a little bit about Vidcon. And, I really want to thank Hank and John Green, because I most certainly am motivated and inspired, and most definitely fascinated by this entire situation and everything surrounding it, so much so that I decided to start a YouTube channel myself, because this thing is a disaster. As everybody probably knows by now, even people who are not really involved in the internet community and the YouTube community, gaming community, these two people, Carl Benjamin, aka Sargon of Akkad, and Anita Sarkeesian of Feminist Frequency had a little bit of a kerfluffle at Vidcon this year. And the situation, it really wasn't investigated very well, in my opinion. You've got one side saying that this was a completely unprovoked and unjustified attack on Sargon, and you've got the other side saying that Sargon intimidated and harassed Anita Sarkeesian deliberately. Sargon has been engaging in a sustained campaign of harassment and abuse against Sarkeesian for years. And so I've really been doing my homework, and I've dug into this. I've watched all of the videos of the event, watched all of Sarkeesian's Fem Frequency videos. I have watched every single Carl Benjamin Sargon of Akkad video that deals with Sarkeesian and Fem Frequency directly, that even mentions her in passing. I've read all of the articles on this because I really think that it deserved a fair look at both sides, and facts are important to me, and being fair and just is important to me. And I want to make it clear, I don't know either one of these people. I neither like nor dislike either one of them, because I don't think that you can form an accurate opinion of someone that you don't know and you've never met. I think anybody who is a gamer has at least an awareness of Sarkeesian and her work, and anybody who watches YouTube or has watched YouTube for any length of time is aware of Sargon of Akkad, at least as a YouTube personality. I certainly was. So, I really wanted to make sure that I did my homework and got my facts right, and that's why we're, 2.5 weeks later or whatever, and this video is being done. But the important thing is, this situation is still ongoing on Twitter and everything else. With Sarkeesian, I'm kind of fascinated by her and her views and ideas. I don't agree with all of them, but I'm certainly fascinated by it. So this is probably going to end up being a series, but it's going to be a respectful and fair series, because I think if I tried to cover all of it, we'd be looking at something the length of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and that's just too much. So first I want to take a look at the Vidcon Rules Code of Conduct for both panelists and attendees. Now, first, it says, it is vital to us that Vidcon is a safe place for all attendees. Vidcon's a private event, and all people who mistreat or disrespect other people will be removed and not allowed for the duration of the event. Featured creators who participate are excited to see attendees, but please be respectful. They need to be safe and ensure attendees are safe. Disorderly conduct includes, but isn't limited to, any behavior that is illegal, unsafe, disruptive, discriminatory, or causes excessive discomfort to our attendees and guests. Vidcon is an event produced by, for, and about online video enthusiasts. As such, Vidcon may be recorded or reproduced by Vidcon, its designees, and or attending participants. All Vidcon attendees and guests are required to adhere to this code of conduct.
If you Google my name on YouTube, you get shitheads like this dude who are making these dumbass videos.
Why don't we just talk?
Whatever, dude.
I want to give to you In Sargon's own words and in the words of other people who were there in that group, the reason why they say they attended the Women Online panel.
My hope for the conference was to learn how Miss Sarkeesian and the other panelists would like to be approached in order to discuss my concerns.
We weren't trying to draw incitement, nor were we tweeting about it really during the panel. It was literally just, we want to sit here and listen. We applauded people on your panel when they made statements we agreed with. We were there to listen and learn, and also to back up beliefs that we agreed with. And that's part of a discussion. It's finding the commonality, finding the common ground.
I went there to just see Anita talk and not harass her. I wouldn't have been lumped in with those people. If I knew that there were people there to harass her, I wouldn't have been associated with them. And in that vein of thought, I can actually go ahead and let you guys know that I really feel like everybody that was present there wasn't there to harass her. Now listen, I'm not going to go ahead and speak for Sargon of Akkad. I'm not going to say that, he hasn't said some questionable things about her in the past. It doesn't matter how right or wrong he was, I don't, none of that shit is of any consequence. The point is that he wasn't there to yell at her. He wasn't there to insult her. He wasn't there to harass her. He was just there to listen to her.
Everybody was literally like, it will be good and refreshing to be there and hear people talk, not on Twitter when, you don't have that restriction of 140 characters, when you can actually, hear what they're trying to say in their context and to understand where their perspective comes from.
And now I want to show you what Anita Sarkeesian's response was, why she believed Sargon and his group had attended her panel. To kick off the Women Online panel at Vidcon last Thursday, the moderator posed the question, why do we still have to talk about the harassment of women? I replied, because I think one of my biggest harassers is sitting in the front row. Their present was plainly not, as one of them later said in an apology video he posted to Twitter, and that person was Bunty, to give us the chance we never gave them and to hear us out, but was instead to intimidate me and put me on edge. They will no doubt plead innocent and act shocked at what they characterize as the outrageousness of such allegations. This, too, is part of their strategy. Gaslighting, acting in a way intended to encourage me and their other targets to doubt ourselves and wonder if this all isn't just in our heads. But to anyone who examines their patterns of behavior with clear eyes, the intentions of their actions are undeniably apparent. Now, I do not want to minimize Anita Sarkeesian's tension and stress and anxiety, I guess, over the situation, because listen, Anita Sarkeesian has most certainly been harassed, abused, bullied, and threatened online. But I personally am not inside another person's head, and so I can't make that judgment about what another person's intent is. The other thing I want to talk about with Anita's statement and her beliefs is where she talks about gaslighting. Now, I am a woman of color, and I have been in abusive situations in my life, and I am a survivor of the gaslighting technique. Now, in my experience, and I am not negating Anita Sarkeesian's beliefs, experience, or what she sees as her reality. I want to make that clear. In my experience, when I have been gaslit, it was, me actually hearing someone say, as a random example, the sky is blue, and them saying, no, I didn't say the sky was blue, I said the sky was gray. Your perception is wrong, your hearing is wrong. To the point that I actually had to start recording conversations because I began to doubt and my own sanity and my own ability to understand reality. That is what gaslighting is. When it comes to a situation like this, and you have so many people saying, this was my purpose, this was my intent, you have to take it at face value because you've never met these people. So you can't ascribe an intent to somebody that you've never met, or at least I can't. And now I want to have a look at Vidcon founder Hank Green's response to this hot mess. Hank did not discuss this situation with everyone involved. He only discussed it with his panelists. And that, for me, is a problem. So let's have a look at this. Vidcon has a tagline for people who love online video. But of course, in addition to celebrating, the event has always been about confronting difficult issues our community faces. It's openly known that women on the internet are subject to far greater amounts and intensity of harassment and abuse than men. This is a pattern and it's pervasive. Running this event, we have to be aware when a creator has a potentially dangerous harassers or stalkers, and our list for female creators is a whole lot longer than the list for male creators.
That was bullshit.
There's a fairly prominent genre of social political commentary on the internet that focuses on specific individuals as a means of attacking their ideas and building outrage. These creators do not violate harassment policies, but the result is often that the vitriol of their followers ends up focused not on ideas but on people, usually women. Many people in these communities end up believing that the righteous thing to do is threaten, harass, and dox the thinkers they're arguing with, whether or not this is an intentional strategy, and we'll get to that later. To cultivate harassment or an awful side effect, the result is some of the worst discourse and most intense harassment on the internet. We're going to get to what the quote-unquote leaders of these communities think of that, and whether or not it's an intentional strategy. And here Hank makes an allegation that he has not substantiated. Some who paid, some who snuck in with fake passes. Let's see what those attendees have to say about that.
I paid. I can't speak to anyone else.
We paid a lot of good money for the passes.
We paid tickets.
Spent all this money on this fucking pass.
Some who paid, some who snuck in with fake passes.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
That is potentially an attempt to purposefully malign Sargon and those who attended the panel with him by calling them thieves. So let's dig into this idea that women they suffer greater harassment than men online. And this is from the Pew Research Center, and fully 73% of adult internet users have seen someone harassed in some way online, and 40% have personally experienced it. In broad trends, the data shows that men are more likely to experience name-calling and embarrassment, while women are particularly vulnerable to sexual harassment and stalking. Men and women experience different varieties of online harassment. Men called offensive names. Men purposely embarrassed. Men physically harassed. Men harassed for a sustained period. Women stalked. Women sexually harassed. So there's a huge difference here. A huge difference. Women, of course, experience more stalking and more sexual harassment, and men experience far more of every other kind of harassment on the internet. According to Pew Research, women have it better than men on the internet. Anita Sarkeesian she's the exception rather than the rule. And I want to examine Hank's assertion that any of these creators, Sargon, Computing Forever, any of these people in this group have deliberately attacked, harassed, or bullied Anita Sarkeesian, or that they have cultivated followers who would do the same. So let's hear what these folks, particularly Sargon, have to say about this.
Did she get abuse from people online? It's entirely possible. I'm against it.
Harbor no doxer. If somebody isn't doing something illegal, like, child porn or plotting terror or trying to kill somebody or something, you don't dox. If people are just expressing themselves or they're having a tiff or whatever, you don't dox. That's the rules.
As anyone who follows my work will be able to attest, I have had a completely consistent record of advocating against the public contacting Sarkeesian at all, let alone sending threats.
Well, let's check the record. Is Sargon's record completely consistent on advocating against harassing, abusing, threatening, bullying Sarkeesian, or contacting her at all? Well, let's find out.
There was no one present at Anita's panel who had been the perpetrator of any harassment, or in any way deliberately cultivated followers who would do such a thing. They all condemn doxing, harassing, intimidating, or threatening, because these things are not only morally reprehensible, but counterproductive to dialogue. I have even gone as far as to make videos to try and investigate into who is harassing her, to find those people so I can stop them, because they are as much my enemy as they are hers. Do you know who the people sending anonymous death threats to Anita Sarkeesian are? Because I'd like them arrested.
Her online attackers published her social security number, her home address.
I have left a link to the FBI's cybercrime division. Please contact them. Please find the people responsible. I don't want Anita Sarkeesian getting death or rape threats either. Contact them so the individuals can be caught, they can be brought to justice. There is of course no reason to harass or threaten Anita, and I am glad that Twitter has dealt with these accounts accordingly by suspending them.
Now I want to show you something that is from the other side, because it's important to me to be fair. And I said at the beginning of this video that the supporters of Anita Sarkeesian really felt that this was kind of a clapback for years of unprovoked harassment and abuse and threats. And so I want you to see how the folks who are supporters of Sarkeesian felt about this incident. Remember, they were only hearing it from her point of view.
I was in the front row with the camera, very excited. Anita Sarkeesian was on the panel, and at one point she said, yeah, I'm being harassed by somebody in the front row who's got a camera. And so that was like, and the whole panel took a turn. It was bad. I don't know any of the other panelists. I didn't know Anita. But it was very plainly horrible. And it was a situation that deserves some language.
It's important to keep in mind that, you know, this woman is absolutely entitled to her opinions and her emotions, and she shouldn't be mocked for that. And it's important to remember that this woman paid just as much for her ticket and accommodations, and her experience was ruined by this incident. She says she didn't know the other panelists. She didn't know who Anita Sarkeesian was, and she was really excited to be there to see Ali Speed, and her entire experience at the panel and at Vidcon was ruined by this incident and this reaction and this strong language, because she runs a family-friendly channel that doesn't have the kind of language that you and I would use. And so this was not okay. But this was condoned by Vidcon without really investigating the situation. And to me, that's not okay. And Anita is decrying the fact that if you go to her channel or you look up her videos, it brings up the videos of people who have disagreed with her, and even sometimes, yes, people who have attacked her.
I get so much harassment that if you look up my videos or you search my names, you will get all of the harassers' videos and maybe one of mine. So the first pages are just flooded with all of these hate videos attacking me. And YouTube's algorithms do that. They prioritize other people's videos, they prioritize videos that have advertising on them. And if I want to be a part of the YouTube network, like the Related Videos network, it forces me to advertise the people who are harassing me on my YouTube channel.
But what she doesn't acknowledge is if I go to YouTube and I type in Goodnight Sweet Gamergate, which is one of Sargon of Akkad's videos that discusses Anita Sarkeesian, it also brings up Anita Sarkeesian's videos.
I am often the poster child for online harassment, right?
Anita, yes, you have been abused. There's absolutely no reason that anyone should endure the kind of abuse, threats, harassment, bullying that you have endured online. But here's the thing. When you say a person's ideas are bad, that's not a personal attack. Criticizing an idea or an argument or data is not a personal attack. It is not harassment. It is not abuse. Here's what Philip DeFranco has to say about that.
Debate or being critical of someone's opinions, that's not always an attack. In fact, more and more these days, I feel like people see criticisms as just hate and attacks on them. But to say that this man just showing up to see this panel was threatening and harassment, I find that ridiculous.
The internet doesn't like anybody, and it treats everybody with equal amounts of hate. And the problem with the internet is that, as my one friend told me, an older man, he's like my grandpa, when I was 17, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one, and some of them stink, and mostly what opinions are is a pile of shit. And this cartoon pretty adequately sums up what most people are doing on the internet. They're shoveling shit onto the internet and then acting shocked when people shovel that shit right back at them.
I wouldn't be here without them. Like, they are not sexist. They are not misogynistic. If you have shit ideas, they're going to argue against your shit ideas. That's just how it is. These dudes don't hate women. Like, they don't. They just treat you like anybody else. They just treat you like a person. You know, if your ideas suck, they'll tell you. If you need to get your shit together, they'll tell you that too. It's not, you know, it's not sexist. Like, I don't know how to put it. Like, it's not. It was really shocking to have a panel of women try to tell the world that women are incapable of handling themselves online and that men are the problem.
Like, I think it's hard when you have this one place kind of to have these kinds of discussions. You almost need like a women Vidcon.
The idea that we need to have a women Vidcon. The idea that we need to segregate people because women can't handle being in the same room as men. The idea that we are so weak and fragile and frightened that we can't be in the same room as men because they scare us and they intimidate us. The idea is honestly the most offensive and insulting thing that I have ever heard in my life, and I've heard some pretty fucking insultive shit.
She's like top shelf misogyny.
Now, I want to be perfectly fair. Anita has absolutely been harassed, abused, bullied, threatened, but I want to look at the dates because I think that this is critical to our understanding of the situation. And but Anita started her Kickstarter in 2012. I want to say May of 2012. And over here we can see that she began receiving harassment in 2012, so 5 years is correct. But where she talks about it is June 7th, 2012. Coordinated online harassment effort, and the accusation is that Sargon of Akkad has been abusing and harassing Anita Sarkeesian for 5 years. Well, Sargon of Akkad's page is only 4 years old. Was started in 2013, and his first video ever put up was about Anita Sarkeesian on June 21st, 2013, a full year after she says the abuse started. Now, I also went and looked at Dave Cullen, Computing Forever's channel, and it took me quite a while to scroll through 9 years of videos. What I found was primarily a lot of video on tech, computers, which makes sense for a channel called Computing Forever. But it was 2015 before I saw a video that specifically talked about feminism and the impact of modern feminism. And so I find it hard to believe that Computing Forever, Dave Cullen, has been openly attacking and harassing Anita Sarkeesian for 5 years. Patreon investigated, and what Patreon found was that there was no evidence. So, I guess my question would be that, are we dealing with an objective assessment, or are we dealing with a perception? And to the people who are jumping on board, Polygon, Mary Sue, Sarkeesian supporters, are we dealing with a situation that of people who have actually gone and watched these videos, or are we dealing with a situation of just taking someone's word? I find it really difficult to believe that anyone involved in this situation, whether it's Hank Green, whether it's the Mary Sue, whether it's Polygon, has done any kind of investigation or due diligence in this, because it didn't take me very long to find this information out. I literally went on YouTube and looked these two guys up and spent a few minutes scrolling through their videos and learned, no, the case isn't there. If we're going to hold Sargon, Computing Forever, any of these people responsible for the actions of their followers, why aren't we holding Anita Sarkeesian responsible for the actions of her followers? When I was researching for this video, I went and took a look at the Twitter accounts, and I thought it was really interesting what I found. Anita Sarkeesian has roughly 750,000 followers. It's a little shy, but for general purposes, this is close enough. Sargon, however, has 250,000 followers, which is roughly 3 times fewer followers than Anita Sarkeesian has. So Anita has 3 times as many followers as Sargon, and something like 26 times as many followers as Computing Forever, Dave Cullen. Are we also going to hold Anita responsible for the things that her followers do? Thinking about the Anita Sargon thing, it's really fucked up. It breaches a new level of deranged. And you go further and they basically call him a stalker. They call him serial killer. I came to it because I follow Anita Sarkeesian, and it was on her Twitter. In this thread, which Anita specifically and directly retweeted and endorsed, this author goes on a dissertation of like 60 tweets talking about, and I mean, I do have to give this woman some credit, because I have never seen so many variants on a name, and they were funny as fuck. But then she makes a statement: people who will use violence in their personal lives are more likely to use violence politically. Where has he used violence? And this was actually endorsed by Anita Sarkeesian. But the thing that really got me about this was that someone who had asked a question and then said, you're literally just doing the thing she meaning this author, had tweeted about, had just spent all this time lecturing about. And the guy says, what? I'm asking questions. Stop doing that thing she literally just started lecturing about. And I mean, this whole entire thread, which was again endorsed by Anita Sarkeesian, is, harassing. It is calling Sargon and his followers names. It is, it's doing the exact same things that Anita Sarkeesian calls harassment, that she calls abuse, that she calls bullying, and she's endorsing it. Why is it okay for Anita to sick her 750,000 followers on 2 people who together their followers do not equal even half of hers, but it's not okay for somebody to question or criticize her?
She's like top shelf misogyny. Her supporters come in and they're like, he's been harassing her for a decade. And then this dude like did like a 5 or 6 tweet thread of like what a piece of shit I am for being pissed off at her because she said women online can't take harassment and he's against harassing people. And I'm like, but you've just written 6 tweets harassing me. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, Anita, there you go. There's your example. How come your audience is harassing this woman?
And the thing is, VidCon is a place where creators and fans and people who disagree can go and hear these other points of view. And Hank Green said it is a safe place for everyone. And so when you create a situation that pits 2 creators against one another, because the very act of being present in a panel discussion is quote-unquote intimidating, then you have made it an unsafe place. At this point, I've spent 5 years kind of almost ignoring this ideology and kind of hoping it would go away because I don't think that it is empowering to women at all. I feel like at this point I need to engage now because silence is complicity. And to me, it's complicity in the rape. And that word rape means plunder, the violent seizure, the abuse, the despoiling, the violation, and carrying off. So the rape of women's agency, and our power, our strength, everything that we are as human beings. What I'm seeing here currently is a grave injustice and great hypocrisy with deceit and false accusations, and I'm not going to be complicit in that. I've spent all of this time digging into this and researching and looking at both sides, and I don't think that Anita Sarkeesian is entirely wrong when she talks about the abuse and the harassment and the threats and the bullying that she received, because she has, but I don't think that she has received it from the people that she has pointed out, because I've looked into it, I've investigated, and I don't see that from the people that she's pointing at, and I see where they have denounced that. I mean, all of the evidence that I found when I started looking into this is not evidence of anyone trying to silence or harass or abuse or threaten Anita Sarkeesian or any of her followers. In fact, I found the opposite. I found evidence of Sarkeesian's followers trying to harass, abuse, or far worse, silence anyone who had the audacity to disagree with Anita Sarkeesian. And as someone who has worn the uniform and taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, I have a question for proponents of this ideology, and that includes Anita Sarkeesian.
How fucking dare you?
And look, I know that the phrasing and the tone of that question is very, very strong, but it's not meant to be harassing or abusive or threatening towards Anita Sarkeesian or anyone else. It's meant to shake people, including Anita, into realizing that the spirit behind the First Amendment is to give all voices, including those that we vehemently disagree with, and even those that we find repugnant and repulsive, the equal right to be heard. Because the very nature of the internet and American history and culture are the free exchange of ideas, the ability to openly debate, to call one another out on our bullshit, and to have these tough conversations, because we need to be well-rounded. We need to understand where each other is coming from, even if we don't agree, because that's how we learn and grow.